Thank you. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the talk. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. I'll talk about myself at the end. I want to give as much time to the topic. I'm not really that important. You can hit me up online if you really want to know more about me, but we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So this talk was actually developed by InfoSister Amanda Berlin, who I'll talk about a bit more later. She's the CEO of Mental Health Hackers. And a few years ago, she started talking about mental health in the community. It's grown a lot, a topic more people are comfortable with. And as you'll see later, it's blossomed into so much more with mental health hackers. So the reason this talk is called Contents Under Pressure is it's a very intense talk. It's a talk that does make some people uncomfortable. But the point of mental health hackers and giving this talk is that even if it's uncomfortable to talk about, it's something we need to talk about. So this talk has been given a bunch of times. I've given about 3 different versions of mental health related talks. Mine is more focused on the skill sets that come from neurodiverse people and how it can be leveraged in infosec. So again, my talks typically cover that focus, but here we're going to get into the deeper talk of why this is important to talk about, the uncomfortable topics that often either have stigmas associated with them or aren't talked about for much. So starting off, we'll talk about the fact that everybody, no matter your walk of life, no matter where you are, no matter your history, probably has some sort of issue, something they are dealing with. So depression is a big one. It's the leading cause for physical illnesses. Typically, depression leads to other side effects that cause issues. So I think it's important that we always talk about these things and bring it up instead of lay it down, because the more we talk about it, the more ways we can come up with solutions, and the more we can help people in our community, our family, our friends. So what are some of the things we're dealing with? When we talk about mental health, there's a lot of common disorders associated. So I'll touch a little bit on some of them coming up, but we talk about things like ADHD, anxiety, autism, bipolar disorder, depression, OCD, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. We also sometimes talk about imposter syndrome in infosec, and it's actually now listed as a occupational phenomenon in the International Classification of Diseases. But since it's not classified as a medical condition, we're not going to talk about it much today. There's plenty of talks about imposter syndrome out there now. A lot of people are talking about it. But diving into more of the mental health disorders side, we're going to start with bipolar disorder. So this was previously known as manic depression. When bipolar people experience mania, they'll usually be upbeat, jumpy, wired, have increased energy and activity, and euphoria. But the issue with this is typically that euphoria can lead to poor decision making, rushed decisions. So even the good side of things comes with a bad side. And then obviously the other side, the depression side, you'll see a lot of things related to chronic depression, which we'll talk about next. So depression, a lot of time the stigma is you're just sad. And that's a really not great stigma to put out there, because depression is so much more, especially people who are chronically depressed. It's a real mental health issue, and not just I'm sad and, the response of, well, life is great, you should be happy. When you're experiencing depression, you're going to have feelings of sadness, emptiness, hopelessness. You may have angry outbursts over the small things, loss of interest in things that you typically love, hobbies, and also insomnia. You're gonna have sleep issues, or you may sleep too much. You may have sleep disturbances. So that's obviously going to impact your day-to-day life if you're not getting your right sleep. Anxiety is another big topic to talk about. There's social or general anxiety disorders. Typically, you'll have struggles talking or interacting with strangers. You may be worried about things that may cause embarrassment. And this will lead you to avoid doing things or speaking to people because of that fear of embarrassment. You might avoid situations where you have to interact with strangers. So again, it can have a huge impact on your day-to-day interactions and functioning. And that's just the top 3 most common mental health disorders. Like I said, you got autism, OCD, schizoaffective, and so many more. So a lot of times these are seen compounded together. For example, you'll see people who have anxiety and depression, or ADHD and anxiety, lots of overlaps. So there's symptoms and there's signs. Signs are what other people can see, and symptoms are what the person feels and how do they respond to how they're feeling. One thing to remember about that is, especially with the stigmas out there, a lot of people with mental health disorders learn to, with autism, we call it masking. So, for example, I'm autistic, but younger, I learned kind of the judgment and the way culture would treat me when they see certain things. And I'm learning not to mask as more now, but I have years of kind of hiding all those symptoms from the world so that they can't see all my issues. And that's why a lot of people will be like, oh, I never knew. And it's like, because I've learned that I'll be judged. So there's no signs, even though there's symptoms. So these aren't just things that a few of us are experiencing. The reason that we've brought it to the community and started these discussions is how widespread mental health issues are. 1 in 5 adults experience a mental health condition every year, whatever that may be. And 1 in 17 experience a serious mental health illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, more. And half of mental health conditions begin at age 14. Then as you get older, by 24, you're likely, if you're going to develop one habit, develop. So one of the ways Amanda described it is the behavior change, InfoSister, the behavior change and the personality changes that come with mental health conditions. It's like a teenager hitting puberty, but randomly for the rest of your life. So if you think of it that way, it can be so rough. So you've probably, a lot of you have seen the semicolon used related to mental health, especially depression and suicide. So we bring it up briefly just so you guys know. Actually, our part of our logo for the Mental Health Hackers incorporates that semicolon because we got to, it represents that a person could have chosen to end their life, as a author could have chosen to end their sentence, but chosen not to. Yeah, and if you look at the statistics for suicide, a 2006 study actually said that of 26,000 college students, over half of them considered suicide at one point. So this isn't just something affecting a small population. It's a common thought that many people experience at some point in their lifetime. It's unfortunate that the cybersecurity community, you may have seen on Twitter, there's a lot of threats of suicide online. There's a lot of people we've lost to suicide. InfoSister, when she started talking about this, part of the reason was because at least 5 people in her life she met have died by suicide. So it's important that we bring support to the community, so that we can support each other and reduce the chances of this happening to our friends and family and coworkers. And I just want to quickly bring up the difference between active suicidal thoughts and passive suicidal thoughts. So an active suicidal thought is bringing in that plan. There's a plan. It may be vague, but there is a very big chance the person is really thinking about carrying this out. And then there's other passive suicidal thoughts, such as, I hope I don't wake up tomorrow. If I, jerked my steering wheel right now, it could be over. But there's no intent behind them. There's no thought out plan. And they typically crop up because of depression, making it more appealing to die rather than continue life. But no one should have to face this alone. That's why we're talking about it, whether it's comfortable or not. It's better to talk about it as a community and be aware of these issues than let people who are facing this face it alone. And by bringing it up, someone who may have felt uncomfortable talking to people before may find their way to feel comfortable. And it's important to, because infosec, a lot of times our industry is not suited to face these challenges. And so we need to start treating mental health issues like we talk about a physical health issue, because it is that same level. If somebody needed to take time off work to deal with treatment for diabetes, you're not going to tell them, no, suck it up, stick it out. And we need to face mental health the same way. We need to be able to say, your employee needs to be comfortable to say, my depression is crippling today. I need to take the time to take care of myself so that this does not impact me long term, and be able to take that time. So that's why we talk about this. We have to get the word out. Like I mentioned beforehand, burnout, even though I haven't touched on burnout specifically, burnout rates are so high in cybersecurity. Probably everyone knows someone who is in cyber, loving cyber, and then, decided, yeah, maybe I'll change careers, because we're pushed to our limits, especially if you're in a high pressure field, like a SOC or incident response. Overwhelmed with clients for different projects. We add on mental health issues pre-existing on top of that. This is why our hiring rates are so low in cybersecurity. Every time we bring new people in, we have people leaving because of burnout. So I want to move into talking about kind of the start of mental health hackers, how we got here. Like I said, InfoSister had been talking about mental health for a little while. A few other people in the community had started sharing talks like this at a conference, especially talking about their issues, trying to break that stigma by saying, look, I'm facing this. Let's talk about it. All of us need to talk about it. So there was, with the interest from InfoSister's first talk on mental health, she wanted to come up with a way to do kind of this mental health workshop, like how at conferences can we bring our presence and bring up this topic. So the idea she kind of came up with was, okay, let's have a chill room, a quiet area where people can hang out at conferences, get away from the noise, get away from, being bombarded with infosec, especially people who had anxiety. Often conferences are rough to meet that many new people. So where's a place where I can go sit in a hole and ignore that for a little while. So that's where at DerbyCon 8 2018, the year before their final year, Amanda submitted a CFP for DerbyCon, got accepted. And they said, we can either give you sponsors or you can try crowdfunding. And she wanted to see what the support we could get for the community, how what the interest and reception was going to be, before the village was even there. So we set up crowdfunding. She needed $3,000, for travel, for all the supplies. This was the first time. And the GoFundMe actually raised over $7,000 between 28 donors. So the village came up, it launched, and a few statistics. There was 22 volunteers, 8 presentations dedicated to mental health topics instead of infosec specifically, 7 group discussions, 2 hours of yoga. We had about 120 chair massages given, and a flattened lintile. Check out Lintile on Twitter if you don't follow him. He's a fun time. So if you've ever been to the village or ever go to the village, you'll see our little blow up loungers. Last conference I ran just a week ago, there was actually snoring coming from that corner. So big popularity at the conferences. Here's just a few pictures from the first year. Again, our inflatable loungers, yoga presentations. It's so chill an area. People will be giving presentations, and as you can see, the rollers are moved up. People are coloring during presentations. We actually, last week, our presentation, we didn't want Blue Team Con to have to pay what were outrageous costs for projectors and stuff. So the format actually ended up being very loose, but very great. People sat down at the table to give their talk and just kind of round tabled it, pulled up their talk on their laptop if they had slides. And it turned out really well, even without having that set up. So along with the yoga and stuff, the yoga presentations, massage therapy, we had paracord crafts, essential oils. A therapy dog came to visit the first one. A fidget table was super popular. Lots of different fidget toys to try. And yeah, so it ended up being really well. And coming out of this, there was clear interest that first a bunch of other conferences started reaching out. Hey, we saw you did this mental health village. If we have a sponsor, can you come? How can we donate to this being run without the GoFundMe still being out? And that is when the idea for a nonprofit, a 501c3, popped up, and named it Mental Health Hackers. I had a friend create the logo. Amanda, I unfortunately, I will always be bummed I did not get to be at the first conference. At that time, I had never even met Amanda in person, but we had talked a few times. She knew I had talked about mental health and was a huge advocate. So she said, well, do you want to come on board? So November 14th, we got our official business license operating as a nonprofit. And by April 11th, 2019, we had our 501c3 dedication. And at the lowest level, how we describe mental health hackers is we're hackers helping hackers. Amanda often talks about how it's kind of AA, but for hackers. We want to bring up issues, talk, have a support community. So I have statistics on kind of up until, this is all pre-COVID statistics. We started running our village again. I believe we've had 2 so far post-COVID, but prior to COVID, we'd offered over 15,000 massages. We'd hosted over 20 hours of yoga lessons. We've printed over 2,000 stickers, 70 volunteers in our Slack, and we've built up the capability to run 4 villages at once. If there was 4 conferences that wanted us in a single weekend, we now have 2 full villages and 2 mini villages, which is basically we have all the supplies you need to run a basic village in shippable boxes. So that was a lot of growth for us. I mean, find us on social media if you want to check it out. In terms of location, we've actually committed to, we've actually run the village in 3 different countries, I believe Germany, England, and the United States. Should I take that back? We did Toronto since the last time. So 4 countries, dozens of states. And so it's been great to bring this not just to the US or to our local areas, but to the whole world, essentially. So just a quick introduction, giving recognition to the board. Follow them all on Twitter. Like I said, Amanda, Info Sister, she's the brains behind this, operates it. And we have a few other officers on board who help with various things, run the nonprofit. Special shout out to Ginger Hacks or Tom. Definitely check him out. He's actually on the board of VetCon, and we brought him on to find the intersect of veterans and mental health. So that's a cool role that didn't exist at first, but he's been so much help. We wanted to integrate that. So what's next for us? We developed a long-term vision. A lot of sponsors ask, what are we going to do in 5 years, 10 years? What if we had an unlimited budget? So me and Amanda started brainstorming, what do we want to do? One of them's already implemented, our ambassador program. Unless any of you would like to pay for me and Amanda to travel to conferences full time. Unfortunately, we have day jobs too. And we've got to kind of delegate some of these conferences. So for example, if somebody in Toronto, that was one case where they wanted a conference. Neither of us had the time nor the ability at the time to travel to Canada. So we had someone who lived right across the border who was willing to drive up the ambassador kit. And again, those are shippable. So any volunteer or ambassador, as we call them, who's comfortable running the village at a conference that wants it, we're able to do that. Long term, if we had the budget, we want to start offering endowments, thinking about the fact that not mental health services often come with a price, and especially if your job does not provide those benefits, we want to be able to help people get the help they need. We'd want to partner with online support services. There's a lot of online therapy services now where you can text or call or chat with therapists. And most of all, and I actually started doing this year coordinating, we want to get as many people as possible mental health first aid certified. So this is just like your Red Cross first aid course, but how to handle a mental health crisis long enough for a doctor or a emergency services to get to a person. Just like with first aid, you're not the doctor that's going to bandage someone up or give them stitches or treat them long term. But if you need to give CPR, if you need to stop bleeding on a wound, first aid gives you the ability to do that. So while you're not going to be the person who treats someone or takes care of someone necessarily, you're not a doctor and able to diagnose things. If there is a schizophrenic person who's having an episode and you need to calm them down, or somebody has made comments that they are thinking of committing suicide, until you can get to them, to that professional who can solve the deeper issues, making sure that they're safe and the people around them are safe. Just a quick intro into but the key point of mental health hackers is they talk about a concept called algae. When you're responding, you assess for the risk of suicide or harm. You listen. That's the biggest thing. You give them reassurance and information and encourage them to go get professional help, and then also encourage self-help and support strategies. So one of the issues, I guess, we came across when we started Mental Health Hackers, well, we had massive support from a lot of people. We did unfortunately come across a lot of people who were very upset we were starting the organization. They asked us how we're qualified, where the doctors are as part of our group. But there's so many resources out there that talk about how peer support works. So instead of losing it back on people who were getting upset with us and responding poorly, Amanda got all the research out there on peer support and how it works. I mean, we see all the Alcohol Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Like, there's these peer support groups where just talking and breaking down the stigma is enough to help people, even if it's to help them seek professional help. At no point will any of our board members, especially me and Amanda, claim that we're able to help professionally. We just want to be able to talk to the community and help people feel comfortable to seek that help. Or some people don't even necessarily need that professional help, may not have these diagnosable mental health conditions, but literally just need a friend to talk to. And so we want to be that friend. We want to be those peers that make you feel comfortable. So we're not the only ones out here doing this. Listing off just a few people to follow on Twitter to see the people trying to make a change in the community. Charles, or BSD Bandit, if you go look at his videos, he'll just record videos of himself in the morning saying everyone's welcoming everyone a good morning, talking to people, just spreading good moods into the air. Marley constantly posts these tweets where she just reminds people she's glad you're alive. Matt, a red teamer, he talks a lot about mindfulness. You got infosec Stefan who just has some daily affirmations, positive vibes, and Blendster. He just has a good attitude, and again, encourages people to reach out, wishes everyone a good day all the time. Security podcast, BreakSec, for example, Breaking Down Security, Security Weekly, Many Hats Club, all of them have podcast episodes dedicated to mental health. So it is getting out there. We are starting to talk about this a lot. 2017, 2018 is when I recall the discussion starting to get broader, this higher visibility into mental health. So it's not just in an industry and in our community that we need to work on this, though. We also need to start changing things in the workplace. Kind of like I said, the idea that you wouldn't fire someone for needing to go treat their diabetes or their heart issues. If somebody's burnt out, has bad anxiety, is literally crippled by mental health to the point that they can't work, either bring up these stigmas or saying, stick it out, like, you're not sick. It is a horrible issue. And so many people are not comfortable talking to their boss, their leadership, HR, about the mental health issue they're dealing with. And I honestly find that really depressing myself. I feel comfortable talking to my leadership about the issues. I know that if I come to them and say, hey, I need a sick day, I'm not in the mindset, I'm having a meltdown, the autism getting to me, my meds aren't working today, I need to go lay down, I need to process, they'll say, yep, take your day, we'll see you tomorrow, we got things handled. So I wish I could, what I want to say is, if you work in a place where you don't feel comfortable, you're working in the wrong place, leave. But people need to make money, people need jobs. So unfortunately, leaving isn't always the option. So it's the workplace that needs to change a lot. We need to create environments in workplace where people are comfortable bringing up the issues, instead of just making things work by trying to suffer through a hostile work environment. So just bringing up a few examples of companies who are working through some of these topics. Bell, they have a Let's Talk Day. They donated over $7 million to mental health in Canada, and they have an entire website they've built dedicated to educating the public about mental health issues. Deloitte is another company. They actually created a position called a C-level executive position called the Chief Wellbeing Officer. She launched a mental health at work campaign that provides mental health first aid training to employees, resources, information, and educational opportunities. Johnson & Johnson created a mental health ambassador program in which they recruited over 1,000 employees across 32 countries, and trained more than 350 of them in mental health first aid training. Additionally, they extend mental health services as a benefit to employees' family members. And then Ernest Young, they have an Are You OK program in which they provide resources for counseling, various methods of counseling, such as like online, on phone, in person, face-to-face. And I'll bring up IBM quick, since I work for IBM. I'll give them a shout out. Like I said, they've made me feel comfortable talking about our issues. And we have neurodiversity specific training, and a lot of safe spaces, private channels for people facing different mental health issues to feel comfortable talking. And getting into the statistics, for those of you who like numbers, for when you're talking to your managers and C-levels and people who speak in statistics and numbers, when they want to know, we could talk about the economic impact of depression and anxiety. So the estimated cost, just in terms of lost productivity due to mental health issues, is over $1 trillion per year in the global economy. Work is good for mental health in a lot of places. People need to have having a purpose means a lot to a lot of people and helps mental health. But when you're introduced into a negative work environment, is not going to be a positive thing for mental health. Harassment and bullying over mental are common problems in the workplace and will have an adverse impact on mental health, especially if you're speaking about someone who already has issues. Somebody has anxiety of what people think of them, and they're outwardly being bullied or having things commented on. It's just going to get worse. So let's see. So what are some changes that can be made? First, flexibility. Like I said, when somebody is having issues and getting burnt out, knowing that you may need to make adjustments. So a couple suggestions: if you have the budget, a monthly stipend, giving people a stipend to use for therapy, meditation, gym memberships, anything that's going to help their mental health. A very important thing is healthier work hours. If somebody's for me, that's a big thing, is kind of having the flexibility of knowing that I can work the hours that work best for me, especially in a lot of roles where people feel the pressure to be around. That's how we burn out, is either working long hours, working hours that impact a person's ability to maintain a work-life balance. Another thing is getting the employee buy-in. If you're going to move forward with these programs, you need your employees to be involved and recognize it. People don't take advantage of these benefits. Like, let's say the monthly stipend example, you may see a low interaction with that thing. But it may be because there's not awareness. A lot of times, like I consistently find out about programs that exist for employees at IBM that just aren't well advertised. So, you might just come across it at some point per mention. So it's important getting it out there. And then again, that stigma is kind of like if you think about those companies that offer unlimited PTO, and there's always that concern about like, was it really unlimited? Like, I don't feel like I can use it because then I'm taking advantage. Same thing with a mental health. Like, okay, well, they give me this stipend, but if I start using it, are people going to start judging me or asking what's wrong with me that I'm using this budget? And it's important that leadership kind of show their support of these programs, open up about their own issues to show that it's not a negative thing to talk about it. We want to make it easier to get help, whether that's opening workplace dialogue, providing coping strategies, making sure your insurance plans cover therapy, those kinds of things. Some organizations may provide online therapy services to their employees, while others bring professionals in-house. For example, there's an accounting firm in Illinois that all of their employees, they have access to a psychologist that's in-house, and a certified life coach that comes in once a year to talk to employees. And then track your progress. Again, speaking to the managers and leaderships, like any program you implement, you have to justify it. So are we seeing a lower rate of people leaving the company, lower rates of burnout? It's important to track quality of the work being produced and productivity levels, turnover rate, sick days, to show that these programs are working. And best bet is they are going to work. There's a reason we're talking about this and bringing up these recommendations. The APA, they have a thing called the Collaborative Care Program that gives an outline of kind of working the workplace and providing resources. So that's a good resource to visit if you'd like to get some more information, workplacementalhealth.org. There's also things you can do on an individual level, changing your day-to-day in order to improve yourself. You can't just rely on your company to improve your mental health. So it's important that while it's important that the workplace make adjustments, you have to make adjustments yourself. I feel confident when I do go to my leadership and say, hey, I need you to adjust this in order to support my mental health, or I need a day off. I'm also making sure that I'm meeting them halfway. Like, okay, you're doing this, meanwhile, I'm doing this. I'm taking a day off, but I'm spending that day figuring out how to get past these issues so that tomorrow I come in a better employee. So one thing I also want to talk about, not just changing your day-to-day, but changing how you interact in the workplace and with other people to ensure that there's a peer support community. So a lot of times we say the wrong thing. Like I said, depression, a lot of people, there's this stigma. It just means the person's sad. So like, hey, cheer up. Like there's good things happening. Like that is not something helpful to say. Calm down is about the worst thing you can say to me when I'm having one of my autistic meltdowns or breakdowns. Like calm down is not what you say to me, because I would calm down if I could. Like that is something uncontrollable due to mental health issues. So one thing, your words matter. Learn what people with mental health issues face. So like a lot of autistic people prefer to be called autistic over a person with autism. There's things like schizo or crazy. Don't use those words to describe people with mental health issues. I always say it's best to talk to the person facing that mental health issues to see what they're comfortable with. And then, again, be kind. That doesn't mean say everything's fine, just relax. The way you offer support to someone facing challenges is being supportive of the issue, and say things like, I'm sorry you aren't feeling well. I've noticed you've been upset. Is there anything I can do? Can I help out? What are you thinking about? What are you struggling with? That's why I try to ask my friends and people I interact with. I I don't think I ever say it's going to be okay, or, just chill out. I'm always trying to get to the deep of it. Like, hey, I notice you've been bummed out. What's up? Not, hey, I notice you've been bummed out. You should cheer up. So finally, in closing, there's so much more we can do. Speaking of which, mental health hackers, I think in May, we ran a Hackers Who Paint session. Think of like painting with a twist, one of those step-by-step Bob Ross style, here's to paint. We have one of those coming up. I'll follow our Twitter for the Eventbrite that I'll be posting soon. But we have these different peer support things. We'll be at conferences. If you want us to come to your conference, reach out. But most important, outside of the organization in general, our community needs to talk, support each other, and make sure we're bringing these issues to awareness in the community and our workplaces. Like I said, just going to end with a bit about me. I never want to start because I got to make sure I got time to do the important stuff. So my name is Megan. You can follow me on Twitter. I have a weird mishmash of talking about my talks, my work with mental health hackers, and my amateur fight career. I'm a threat researcher at IBM. I am autistic, and I am the CFO of Mental Health Hackers. I had the math degree on the board, so they designated me CFO because apparently I'm good with numbers. But if anyone has any questions, I'm going to turn it back over to the studio and let them handle that piece.